Hi there, it is Jo from Minerva, and today we're doing a technique tutorial on plackets. Now, plackets is a whole world. It can be used on necks and cuffs, and you can get lots of different styles, but today I'm going to show you a really simple version to get you started called a continuous placket. And I'm going to use it on the cuff of a shirt. So if you've got a traditional cuff shirt, you'll have the cuff that's interfaced. You might have some pleats here, and then in some way you'll need to finish the slit at the bottom of your shirt sleeve. You're working in very small area, so you need to be quite precise, but it's quite a simple process which gives a really nice finish. The pattern I'm working with is New Look 6449, one of my all-time favourite patterns, and this is the shirt dress from that pattern. And also I made the grandad collar style, and I made it into a shirt. So I found where my waist measurement was, I matched that up to the shirt pattern, the front and the back of the shirt dress, and then I measured how long I wanted my shirt and cut it off. This shirt has a curved hem, so I found where my waistline was so I could get it to go in, and then I curved the hemline. So from this pattern I've made a t-shirt dress, two shirt dresses, one with a collar, one with a grandad collar, and I've also hacked a shirt. Today I'm going to make a winter shirt because this is a shirt that I wear in the summer mostly. It's a cotton poplin. I'm wearing a t-shirt underneath because it's colder weather right now, but I'm going to make one out of needle cord. In order for the instructions to make sense for you, it's really important that you mark any notches or dots, because you'll be asked to sew to a particular place and actually change your seam allowance. So you'll have a seam allowance that starts at the edge of the cuff, and then it's going to go really narrow towards the end to make that point at the bottom. So you need to make sure that you've got your notches marked before you do any cutting or sewing. So that you understand which part of the sleeve we're doing, we're going to have a look at the sleeve anatomy close up. So this is the bit that we're trying to do. There's a little binding over the edge of the slit there, and the other edge looks completely flat. You can't see anything there. And inside there's a little triangle that folds so that the one with the binding goes underneath and the flush one stays on the top piece. So it's important when you transfer your markings that you get your left and right arm correct. And this isn't because I'm showing people how to put a cuff sleeve on. This is to make sure that you get your slit marked out, but you know which one is going to be the under piece and which one's going to be the over piece. So this is another way to look at a sleeve, is the pattern piece. This pattern happens to have quite a short arm on it, so I split it here and added some between the upper sleeve and the lower sleeve. Along the lower sleeve this is the placket that I'm going to do today, and there's a dotted line to trace and 3 dots to mark. This is the pleat, so I need to make sure that the pleat is going in the right direction. If you cut this out on single fabric, not double, then you will need to make sure that you turn all of your pieces over so that you get an opposite sleeve. If you're cutting your fabric on the fold, then you can just cut out one set and then your pleats and markings will be in the correct place. It's important to make sure that you're going to get yourself a left sleeve and a right sleeve. Okay, so let's have a look at how the continuous placket goes onto the shirt slit, which is here. So the first thing you need to do is to transfer the markings from the pattern. So I've used chalk, but I've also used tailor's tacks, and I don't always use tailor's tacks, but you're working from the right side and the wrong side of the fabric. So if you mark one side, you haven't actually got the markings that you need. So mark the dots on the little placket, mark the dots for the slipped marking, because you're going to change the seam allowance a little bit, so you need to know where to make your seam allowance slimmer and where to make it wider. Next, you're going to sew along the lines marking the slit so that they don't fray when you cut the slit in a moment. So just sewing through the one layer along the sleeve, sew as accurately as you can following the lines. What you can do at the end of the point, rather than pivot straight away, is you can just do one stitch going across the end, and that gives you just a little bit of room for your scissors to snip. So you've got a line going up, one stitch across the end and down. Now you can cut up the centre of your slit. I've got some fray stop, so I could put a little bit of fray stop at the end of the point if I've got a fabric that was going to fray a lot. This is a cord, so it's quite stable, but you can put a little bit of glue just near the end of your point, and then you can wait for that to dry. It doesn't take long, and then you've secured the end of the point. And make sure you haven't cut through your stitch line at the top. Next, you're going to work on the placket, and you're going to press under a 6mm seam allowance along one edge of the placket, and it's the one with the notches marked. Next, you're going to spread this slash open so it's almost like a completely straight line. And then we're going to put this so that the right side of the placket is against the wrong side of the sleeve and match up the notches, which is why I really wanted to use those tailor's tacks. When you get to the centre one, you need to pin quite carefully because you don't want to get any wrinkles. So match up the other one, pin to the end, and you will notice that your centre point is peeling away a little bit from the raw edge. This is fine. Just make sure you're not going to get any wrinkles. You need to sew this at 6mm. And you need to sew really nice and slowly. But as you sew towards the point, your seam allowance will really grade out to virtually nothing. And as you get to that point, it's a good idea to use your hand wheel just to roll one stitch at a time. Lift your foot if you need to, just to release that fabric. And just keep using the hand wheel to get past that point. Then you can pivot and continue down the rest of the placket, and at the bottom you need to have your 6mm seam allowance again. It's not a mistake, but you'll notice that the raw edges don't match up. And then your placket will fold over the seam allowance. So start at one end, take your tacking out now because you don't want that to be poking out. Fold your placket in half and then fold it over so you can't see the seam line. Pin this in place then go to the other end. So don't start at the point, go to the other end. And it's best to see where the fabric lies at the center point. Sometimes it's best just to let the fabric find its own place and try and force it into a position. So when you get to that center point, it should almost fold itself, but you want to make sure you're not getting any folds in the fabric. I'm going to sew along here. Looks a little folded, but you just want to make sure you haven't puckered the fabric at that center point. It needs to fold. Now to complete, you need to add the rest of the features. So these are the pleats and they fold towards the placket. And you need to put these in now so that you can make sure that you have two opposite sleeves. So your binding that turns under goes on top of the other one and your pleats face towards it. Now we need to work on this top corner. Press down and mark the back of the fabric so that you've got a little triangle at the end of your placket. You can sew along here, you can use a machine or hand stitch. Just a tiny little row of stitching, making a triangle. But when you fold it the right way, it holds each placket in the correct place. The triangle on the back, the lap, the underlap, and you need to make two of those and they need to be opposite. So here's the outer placket, here's the outer placket, and I've got two opposites. Next I'm going to sew up the seam and press. Here are the two plackets and you can see they're opposites. Now that we have the continuous placket applied, we can put on the rest of the cuff. So sew around the outside of your cuff at 1.5 centimeters. Mark your buttonholes so you don't get them in the wrong place. And clip off the corners so that you get a good turn. You can also take out some of the seam allowance to stop it being too bulky. Turn your cuff right side out and work the points. This is your opportunity to get them as good as you can. Press. Next, look for that buttonhole marking because you will need that to be on the right side, not on the inside of the fabric. Just check where it is. And mark this with tailor's tacks. You'll have no complications now getting your cuff on the wrong way round. There's a notch here and that's going to help make sure you get your cuff on the right way as well. You're only going to use one layer with your shirt and the other one needs to be pressed out of the way. It's pressed down at 1 centimeters, which means I've got a 1 centimeter seam allowance to sew the cuff on. I'm going to match up the notch and then very carefully the ends Got to make sure I keep all of those pleats flat and lying in the right direction because I don't want those to be twisted. Then I can match up the other end and ease in any fabric. Double check now before you sew that you've got the buttonhole with the smooth folded under placket, and you've got the button placement to go underneath with that little bit of placket turned over. Yep, double checking. That's right, that's on the buttonhole side. So now I want to make sure that I've got this 1 centimetre seam allowance that I allowed with the press. So I'm going to mark that, and it makes sure my cuff will be the same length on each side. Here it is sewn on. So I can take out the pins, and I need to press this towards the cuff. Now it's all pressed, I can enclose everything, just tidy up any threads at this point so everything's out of the way, and fold the cuff over so the pressed edge is covering everything. Use the stitch line as a guide for your pinning. Be particularly careful about the ends. Now we need to top stitch around here, or we can hand stitch, and this is our finished placket. So it's got the buttonhole on the top, the button placement will be underneath, our cuff is the same depth, and the placket binding is on the button side, all finished. So that's how you make a continuous placket, and obviously I need to show you how to put the cuff on so that you can see the underlap and the overlap. It is a placket technique that's used in both men's shirts and women's shirts, but you do get different styles. So on the Grainline Studio Archer shirt, you get a placket which has a little tower at the bottom, like a point, and there you put a row of square stitching with a cross through the middle. So there are a few different styles. If you like making plackets, or you've just recently learned how to do it, or hopefully this video will have helped you, then you can use the bottom of a sleeve so that you can hack it onto a different pattern. And you can see here I want to use the Atelier Jupe Frida pattern, and I've made it before, but the sleeve is 3/4 and it's sort of gathered, but when I've got it there I get it sort of stuck in my coat. So I want to have it as a full length sleeve with a button placket, and so I'm going to hack the shirt sleeve piece, and here's how I did it. So I want to change the Frida pattern by Atelier Jupe. It's got 3/4 sleeves. This is the sleeve, so I know the head's going to fit into my blouse. And then I've taken the New Look 449 piece and put that along the bottom. I've measured my sleeve length, and I've also cut out the cuff. I can change that if I need to. So I want to change from 3/4 to a cuff. And to cut it out, and just grade the bottom part of the sleeve into the top part. And add all of the notches so that I can repeat all of the skills that I've learnt today. So I've got my pattern, my new cuffs, and my hack sleeve. You can alter your overall sleeve length by small amounts by trying your sleeve on before you put the cuff on, and then you can change the depth of your cuff to change the length of your sleeve. You don't want to get it out of proportion, but you can get 1 centimetre here or there if you want to make it a touch longer or a touch shorter. Well, I hope that's either helped you along on a project that you're working on, or has helped you decide that actually it's not as bad or as complicated as you think to put a cuff and placket on a shirt. So hopefully that'll open a whole new choice of patterns that you can choose from. While you're thinking what pattern you might like to try, in the meantime, head over to Minerva and check out our fabrics, patterns, tutorials, sew-alongs. There's so much to see, so much inspiration, and we would like to see you make an account so you can share your makes with us too. You'll get lots of comments and support and inspiration from other Minerva makers. Thank you very much for watching. Do call again soon.